at least know each other's names, a little bit fun facts. So when we're addressing each other in the room, we can say each other's names, and hopefully we feel more comfortable sharing our topics and what we have to say. So basically, a little bit about RKJ in general, right? So I think more than just a brand, like it's really important for me to kind of take a step back to actually realize like what kind of impact I really actually want to do to the community. And even though I'm not big, I still think that making one kind of step is still better than none. So again, like I really want my brand to focus on that combination of two cultures. Like a lot of us, whether we were born in India and came here, or we were born here and are South Asian, or maybe we are South Asian and we have different cultures, but it's hard to assimilate to a new culture, a new identity. So it's important that we kind of talk about these things together and make sure that we understand that everyone here is so different and unique in their own way, but that should never be a negative thing. And it should never be a way or a flaw that we kind of treat each other. So that's kind of my focus here. And I really want to make sure that this space that we create today is safe and there would be no judgment whatsoever. Any comments that we make, I hope you guys know, we'll be safe here, and there will be no judgment. So our topic today is eating disorders and body dysmorphia. So, I feel like it's a topic that we all are kind of familiar with. I think with the presence of social media in itself, we can see a lot of maybe not abnormal, but unhealthy thinking that we might have ourselves, or we see that with our friends or family or just people in general. I think sometimes society makes us feel like we have to look or attain a certain body type because we have to feel desired by something or someone. And I think that it's a very disgusting mindset, I think. And even though we might feel like, yeah, like that's wrong, but sometimes, your inner demon might feel like that's something that you have to focus on. Like maybe you're working out because you want to look a certain way, or you're not eating a meal, or you're skipping certain stuff because you want to look a certain way. And I think that's something that like I have done in the past. And I know friends have done that in the past, but it's something that I think that us as a community does that too a lot. I think we always talk about like aunties and uncles who talk about maybe our weight. Like I've like gone to, family friends' house where they'll always comment on my weight or how I look, or maybe I should do this to lose weight, or like this because this celebrity is doing this, or you know what I mean. So like it's a toxic environment, and I think that because society has kind of triggered those thoughts to us, but also maybe our community has triggered those thoughts on us, it can also lead to a lot of like negative impactful thoughts that we kind of provide to ourselves, even like in like TV shows. Like I remember in I think it was Indian matchmaking, like I think Seemanti was talking about like slim trim, and or like just comments, and people making comments on TikTok, or just disgusting things, and people being treated differently because of how they look, and they're not society's version of what they want. So I guess these are important things that we need to talk about, I think. And eating disorders and um body dysmorphia are very important, and especially younger generations, they face a lot of these things. And I think our community, our generation, has had a lot of untreated problems and disorders that we haven't had that kind of chance to talk about. So that's what we're going to talk about today. It's important, like I mentioned, it creates a toxic environment. So for example, like um I've been in a situation where maybe I've been with a group of people and friends have been like, oh, I have to diet for this particular event, and then I'm like, okay, I gotta diet because I clearly am bigger than them, and if they're feeling that they gotta diet, then I have to diet. So there's a lot of toxic environments, and we sometimes forget that verbiage and the verbiage we use can be really like potent to someone's mind. So even if that these verbiages might not be as bad to me, they might be toxic to other people around me. And that's something that I actually didn't really know about. And it was at dinner I had with Priyanka, actually, where she was talking about how verbiage is very important and how we should be more aware of the things we say, and how some of those things we say can actually trigger a lot of these different conversations we have in our own head, when it comes to eating, disorders and body dysmorphia. So I'll have Priyanka share about that more too. But for example, like, I remember, like, to me, like, I know, like, I've had friends who are smaller than me who will kind of talk about how they feel so big, or they feel like they feel fat. And again, being fat to me, like, being fat isn't a bad thing. But at that time in high school, when you hear that things from someone who you knowingly is a little bit smaller than you, it kind of took it to my head. And I was like, okay, if the person who's smaller than me is thinking that they're bigger or gaining weight, then I'm definitely gaining weight. So then I started maybe starving myself or skipping meals or going excessively, exercising. So things like that, like making sure that you're using that right verbiage, being more cautious about what you say. And then this kind of also leads more into the fashion space of, like, there's a lot of health implications that can happen for models. So like, if you look, I think it's getting better, but it's not quite there yet at all. But most of the model demographics you see in fashion kind of look similar. They're all beautiful, but a lot of similarities, and maybe a lot of models who we don't know their everyday kind of lives, or maybe they were born genetically like that. Maybe they have a very strict routine diet that maybe not all of us want to follow. But a lot of models, like when we were doing some research, we were seeing that there's a lot of pressure from the industry of having to look a certain way, or maybe even they who maybe are 00 models feel overweight because of their own body dysmorphia. So that kind of shows that no matter your size, body dysmorphia is and eating disorders are still prevalent. And then this leads to, mental health issues. So, it's very, very important to see that this is a spectrum, and that even anything that related to your physical health always goes to your mental health. I think we have to work together to not have so much focus on the way our bodies look. Like, we got to make less comments about people's body images, or wow, this person blah blah blah, or this person has this nice or this bigger blah blah blah. It's just not, it's not good conversations to have, in my opinion, I think. So right now, I think the fashion industry, sometimes we were looking at different model requirements, a lot of the model agencies, different gigs are prioritizing thinness, different sizes. Like, they'll ask, we want this size to this size, or this height to this height. But I guess we really want to, at RKJ, I guess one step that we are doing is, when we have our modeling platform or modeling sign up form, we don't ask those requirements, I guess. And I think this last one, when we talk about encouraging wellness and health lifestyles, I think prior to any of our shoots, like, we like make sure, like, we're making sure that our models are talking about, like, or making sure our models aren't like not eating. We're telling them, like, we're gonna make sure we're eating proper meals. You're enjoying your life. Like, if you want to drink, you can drink. If you want to smoke, you can smoke. Nothing should kind of restrict who you want to be because of a certain image that you think that needs to be portrayed. So that's kind of what RKJ is doing. Obviously, there is a lot things to discuss that I haven't touched upon. So I think that I want to kind of break this down into two things. So the first half of the conversation, I want to hear your guys' thoughts on where we are right now when it comes to body dysmorphia, eating disorders, maybe situations that you have felt pressured by society to look a certain way, or kind of maybe felt through to the society's disgusting mindset. And then also, I want to focus on what you think RKJ can do to really make sure that at least we're letting our followers, our viewers, our models do whatever we can to not have to feel that way.
Thanks, Renee. I can start.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a couple thoughts. I mean, I think I haven't personally experienced like having an actual eating disorder, like a diagnosed eating disorder, but I know I have gone down the path of having disordered thoughts on how my body looked. I remember it was like a few years ago, I was really into like fitness and I just became obsessed with dropping my body fat percentage and getting this like really lean body composition. And I was working with a coach at the time. And I remember like I would send her my progress photos and I was so lean in these photos, like so lean, and I would tell her like I want to continue cutting and she would try to tell me like, Julie, you look great. Like you've already leaned down quite a bit. I don't think you need to push it. But in my mind, like I wasn't there. And now, several years later, like I look back at those photos and I'm just like, wow, I know I had those like thoughts that I had were disordered because like what I was seeing in the mirror was not what everyone else was seeing. And I think like, you know, I think you kind of like touched on this before with like social media. I definitely think that body dysmorphia is even more elevated because of social media these days, like AI and all these like filters and things. It really gives this like false sense of perfection, like you could see, if we're on like talking about fitness, for example, like you could see someone online with like their abs showing and they look like they're in such great shape when in reality they're standing in a particular pose or they're standing in a particular lighting and they've done some photo editing, like I have friends that are kind of going down the path of like doing different kinds of like procedures on their face or getting like injections and things like that. And I think that like I think some of that is like okay as long as it's coming from like a healthy place, but I think if you're doing it because of what you're seeing on social media or like what you're seeing your friends what like from like a comparison like mindset, I think that's problematic. I think that like if you are kind of finding yourself feeling invalidated or like going down the path of these like body dysmorphic type comparisons as a result of what you're seeing on the internet, like, mute, delete, like get them off your feed.
Mhm.
And then again, just like reminding yourself that what you're seeing on the internet is like, it's absolutely not real life. Those are edited, like filtered images and it's just not real life.
Yeah. Well, I guess a question for everyone too. I guess why do we as a society think um that maybe lean is the ideal where and not even health benefits, but why is that deemed attractive versus not lean? Like why do we think that?
Can I actually answer that?
Please, yeah, yeah.
So I kind of did a history kind of like into this just because I switched over from like high fashion to now I'm a chef. And so
Yeah.
I do farm to table food. And so my thing was all about clean eating. And I was trying to figure out when did it get to a point because women that were doesn't matter if you were skinny or not, but women that just had curves were still desirable in the past, like back in the day. So I was like, what changed?
Yeah.
Um, I hate to say this, but it was the change of the figurines of certain like history matters. And I hate to say this, but it was because of men wanted a certain like symbolism because of art. Art changed, and art back then was similar to how social media is right now. So these people would see these art pieces and these paintings, and they'd be like, I want a woman like that. Like, I want her to look like that. So I was sitting here and I was like, damn, these people want these art pieces. I was like, these women aren't even real. So when
Yeah.
you were saying about social media, I think Julia was talking about social media, when they see these women, that's what it's come down to. And at the point we're going through a phase where we're learning about pronouns and gender equality and all that. So, but technically a man and woman were meant to be together at that point. You never talked about anything else. So when it came to a woman's body or a men's body, because now men are in the system too as well. there's a type that we're stuck in, and especially with South Asian culture too. You know, I recently just went through body dysmorphia last year. It was pretty bad. And then I looked at myself, and this is the joke, because have you ever seen a picture like from the past where you're like, oh my God, I was so big. Like at that moment in the picture, you were like, I was so big. Like, and then you look back and you're like, damn, girl, I was fine. Like, jokes on us, right? We've
Yeah.
always been great. We've always been great. And we just don't tell ourselves that. So I think it's just about changing the narrative, because the story has stayed the same.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
unfortunately, our generations are now the cycle breakers, and it's so hard because we're dealing with double cycles. We're dealing with cycles from our grandparents and our parents, and then we're dealing with like just BS cycles from the food industry, the fashion industry, and what people tell us to do. And
Yeah.
right now, I say, F it, live your life and be happy. If you wake up when you're happy, like wear something that makes you happy. Doesn't matter what you look like you said, do what you want.
Yeah.
So breaking those cycles comes from within. And I don't know how to say this. Like, for one example, and then I'll let someone to speak, is like
Yeah.
Victoria's Secret fashion show. I used to love that fashion show, like watching it, but never in my head did I ever want to look like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these girls, they work out like 8 weeks in advance, eating 2 meals, like cottage cheese and celery, working out 3 times a day, but for the rest of the year they eat whatever. But people don't know that in their mind, right? They just see these Barbie doll figurines and they think this is it. So I think it comes in a structure. Yes, social media and the fashion industry does need to like change. I completely understand, and I think it's finally happening, which I love to see the diversity, but we need more of it. But I think we also need to work on our inner challenge of how we're going to stop this and not let that execute our mindset as an internal growth and whatnot. So, but yeah, that's my take.
Yeah. No, I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Akila. Anyone else want to add to that, or maybe bring up a new point?
Yeah, I love, oh, you can go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I love everything everyone said so far. I feel like it starts very young, especially like in the South Asian community. Like my little cousin is like a little chubby, and my mom and like my aunts will call her like Moti. And I always yell at them and I'm like, stop calling her that. Like, why are you reducing her into like and like calling her that as if that's like all she is? Like you're like, and she calls herself, she's like, I'm fat. And I'm like, no, you're not. Like, eat as much as you want. Like, who cares? Like, and I always tell them, like, stop saying that to her. It's so like you're poisoning her mind. And she's so little. She's like 7 now, and they've been doing it for such a long time. And I just think it's like just creating this false narrative for her to grow up with the people who are supposed to like love and support her are calling her this, and it's like she's never going to forget that. Like she's always going to think that she's so young and so impressionable. So I feel like it's such a common thing for people to do that, or just comment on like weight, or like and like makes jokes about it. Like my mom will like see someone and be like, oh, she looks so weak, meaning like she looks heavy, or like looks overweight, and she'll be like, oh, she like itni kamzor hai, like she's so weak. And I'm like, mom, like what do you like, for what, like why? And then she shames herself too. She's like, oh, I'm so fat, and like this and that, and like, oh, did I lose weight? And I feel like it's definitely affected my own like perception. Like when I turned, I think I was like 16, I gained a lot of weight because I had a lot of acne. So I went on birth control, and it made me gain like a lot of weight. And I was always really, really skinny. And people, especially, no one said anything to me except for my family and my extended family. And then I was anorexic like after that. So it really did affect me. And like if I told anyone, they would just be like, oh, you're being over dramatic. Like it's not a big deal. Like, and like shaming me for like saying something about it. So yeah, and I like still struggle with that. Like if someone says I look skinny, like I get really happy. And I always like, I like being small, so like I will watch what I eat and like make sure I stay the same size. So I feel like it starts so young. I was so young too, like when people were saying things to me, and like they always, like people especially in my family or like family friends who are brown or like, you know, in the South Asian community will always comment on my weight because I am pretty small. So I don't know. I feel like
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. Seriously.
yeah.
Yeah. I guess we'll Richa, feel free to share what you were gonna say, and then Alia, we can I'd love to kind of share what I was to respond to what you were saying. So
I mean, you can go ahead and respond to her and we can continue after
are you
too.
sure? Okay, well, I first want to say like Alia, like I feel like it takes so much strength to share what you did. I think it's hard, I think, because it's like you were saying with your cousin, it's like family is also the people that you think that are having your back, and then kind of being that devil, that mindset that's coming in your head, and like you're sharing your experience too of like no one else was saying anything about your weight because no one needs to say anything, but the only people that were saying it was your family, and that can be really triggering. Like for me too, like I feel like in high school, like I was going through this phase too, where um like you would hear these comments from family friends or friends like, oh, she's gained weight. And there was a time where I literally like I would literally just like go to high school, like I'd go to class and just skip breakfast and lunch and then come home and eat whatever dinner my parents made. And then like I remember that was like, that's so bad, but I drastically lost so much weight and I was so happy because all my friends were saying, oh my God, you lost so much weight. And my parents were like, wow, like you look so good, and like those like positive like reinforcements were like, Renee, you're doing a good job, keep starving yourself, and that mindset went into college. Like in college, like I didn't eat properly. Like I would skip meals all the time because I felt like I had to like attain a certain body shape. And it wasn't until my senior year of college where I finally had like my first meal, which was like lunch. I finally had ate lunch. And I remember that was such a big moment for me because I would literally eat granola bars for lunch, and that's so bad for yourself. And it was traumatic, and like even nowadays, like when I started taking antidepressants, like when you said birth control, like some of the normal stuff is like gaining weight. And a big part of me was like, do I really want to take a drug that's going to make me gain weight? Because I already know I have problems with body dysmorphia, but a part of me knew that like I had to prioritize my mental health versus my physical health. And thoughts have come again, like, should I just stop eating lunch, and like I've had those thoughts, detox teas, I've bought so many different weight pills, like, and it's so bad, it's so bad. And it's just all our how we like kind of was growing up, and those negative positive reinforcements. So yeah. Richa, I interrupted you again, so go ahead.
No, I'm actually glad that you got a chance to speak first. First of all, I'm so sorry that like you had to go through that. But like going off of that, I was in the same boat. I was like 16, 17. I was like sophomore, junior in high school, right? And this was when social media was just kind of starting to pop off, and like Vine was a thing and everything. And I got into content creation at that point, and it was just, I think what I wish I had then was that people raised awareness about these things. Like I feel like in South Asian community, nobody talks about it, because I bet you if we were to go to like a doctor and be like, hey, this is what I was doing, I was eating like one meal a day, because I did that too. I would like maybe have a glass of milk for breakfast, nothing else, which is absolutely terrible, skip lunch, come home, barely eat anything for dinner, and I would just call it. And I would have like the worst headaches. And I feel like I kind of see that where like now my body is like, I mean, I still don't eat a lot, but like I get low blood sugar very easily, because it's just like my body is like, no, you need to take care of me. But nobody tells you these things. South Asian households, who's going to tell you to look for like the warning signs? Like nobody. Like I know we've been talking about changing the narrative, but I think a huge part of it is like our parents, ourselves recognizing this, because 16, 17, I didn't know what an eating disorder was. We don't talk about this at home. Like I look back and I'm like, oh my God, like I've always been on the heavier side, but looking back at those photos, I'm just like, oh my God, I was so skinny, and like there was definitely something wrong like going on there.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it also, like kind of what Akila was saying, like it comes from that like male point of view, because when you're a girl and you create content, a lot of your viewers tend to be male.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know, when I was in high school, I wasn't getting that kind of attention. And for me to just suddenly have all of this attention, in my head, it was like, oh, validation. Like I'm getting male validation. I've never had this. I need to keep up appearances. But
Yeah.
nobody told me like, hey, this is really unhealthy. You probably shouldn't also be like weighing so much on that validation. And
Yeah.
like, you need to watch for the warning signs.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's so true. And I think that it all stems from all of this, you know, like the male validation, the parents not having that resource. It's like, I think that like if we ever noticed our kids' generation kind of having those symptoms or tell signs, I think we kind of know the right kind of steps now. Maybe not the right steps, but we kind of know a better direction to take to help our kids out, you know, maybe like seeking help maybe more quicker than maybe someone who is post college or during college.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
Just as a child, like when I was a baby, well, babies don't count. We were all small or whatever. But as
Yeah.
like you're as you grow older, you get like in your 10s, 12s, whatever. During that kind of that weird, awkward phase, I feel like a lot of Indian kids, maybe it can go both ways. You're either chubby or you're either skinny. I was extremely skinny, like skeleton skinny.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of people would be like, oh, Akila, you need to eat, you need to eat, you need to eat.
Yeah.
And now I'm 5'11", thick and curvy, love my body. But let me tell you, people like, it's like people are never happy with no matter what your body shape is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to the point, and I was like, why am I listening to these fools? Like,
Yeah. That's so true. That's so true. It's always
yeah.
great.
I think at the end of the day, I was just wondering if anyone went through that, like where it's like you're either too skinny or you're either like, I'm just like, first of all, it's not your body, so F off.
Yeah.
And second of all, like it takes time and practice, though, I think, to see that. But it's still hard because we are trying to switch a narrative that's like centuries old.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a lot on our shoulders, you know, but we're doing great. We're doing great.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing that. Priyanka, it looks like you're saying something.
Yeah, no, you're good. I was actually gonna say something about that, and then Akila, you went right into it, and I was like, oh my God, I have like the same experience. But I feel like it's so good, like Renee, that you're having this environment, because like it seems like so many, and like I also went through a very similar thing, and like I think it starts like so young, and like you said, you know, like I have friends whose like nicknames when they were younger was like fat in whatever language, and it was like a term of endearment until it like became not a term of endearment. And like I have an aunt, and like we have like many Minas in my family, if you're Tamil, you know. But we like one of my aunts is like normal Mina, and the other one, her like name is like fat Mina, is like what they call her. And like when I was like older, I asked my dad, I remember being like, why do you call her that? Like that's so weird that you like refer to someone as like fat. And he was like, no, it's like, you know, no one gets like hurt by it. It's just like a pet name. And I feel like that pet name is like a band-aid that like they put over a lot of these things, but it doesn't actually, I don't know, it doesn't do anything. Because I'm sure like it's like one of my farther relatives, but like I'm sure she thinks about it. Like I would if everyone was calling me fat to my face every day. Like
Yeah.
I would definitely not be okay at all.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
similar experience as Akila, I like, you know, I was like kind of a skinny kid. No, I wasn't like skeleton skinny when I was a kid. I was like fine average. But like then obviously you hit puberty and you gain weight, and like that's completely natural. But
God
then
forbid you get boobies in a butt, like, oh dear.
but also everybody wants a boobies in a butt. So
Yeah.
but like none of the other fats. So you just have to, you know, section. Yeah, it's so dumb. Anyways, but in like 8th grade, I think it was, I wasn't doing any sports. I just like put on more weight, going through puberty, whatever. And I saw this auntie, and it's like the first thing that all brown aunties say to you, right? Is like, or like I have friends that are like not brown, like in other cultures, and like she was like, it's the same thing. It's like very like, oh, you gained weight, oh, you lost weight, like let me comment on that, because obviously it's like this random auntie's place. So she had told me, she looked at me and she goes, oh, you gained a lot of weight. And I was like, okay, because like I too was like struggling with that fact. So I was like, okay. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what you want me to say to this. And she was just like, yeah, like I don't know, you should like work out or do something, like doesn't look good. And I was just like, okay. And then like I was in 8th grade, like I didn't really care, and like I'm lucky that it didn't hit me as young, but like I was just like, okay, whatever. Like I was like upset about my body, but I didn't really do much about it.
Yeah.
And then naturally got older, like I was also like more active in high school. And then I had gone to India and I had food poisoning for like 10 days and like shat my life away. Like literally for 10 days, couldn't eat anything. Like I had lost a lot of weight. And I was like, it was like not healthy at all. Like I didn't feel good. Like, and I knew it wasn't healthy. And like I had just gotten back. And this is the first time I'm seeing her since 8th grade. So this is like right before I went to college. And she like looks at me and she goes, oh my God, you lost a lot of weight. And I was like, yeah, I know. Cause like that's what everyone had been telling me at this event. She was just like, yeah, you lost a lot of weight. And I was like, okay. And I'm like conditioned to think that, you know, losing weight is a good thing, which like, I don't know, Renee, like you were saying, like, I don't even know what that means, like why it's good, why it's bad. Like there's no actual reason for it. It's just there. But she was like, no, it's like not a good thing. And I was like, oh, okay. And she was like, no, you're like too skinny. Like, I don't know if you're like trying to look good for the boys or something in college, but like you need to like, she was like, you need to like gain weight. I don't know what you're doing. And I was like, I haven't seen her since then. But I was like, number one, I knew like it wasn't an intentional thing that I had gone through. And like, I was like, okay, last time I saw you, I was too big for your liking. And this time I saw you, I was too thin for your liking. So like, which like how are you supposed to find that range that like appeases everyone? And then I don't know, I hate when people say that, when that's like the first thing they comment on. And like my parents know that like I'm really big on that, and I'm like, don't like you, what you think of other people and like how much they weigh, like that doesn't matter to you at all, and there's like it's not affecting you, so why are you commenting on it? And like I don't know. I feel like that's like something I've told them to, like with their friends, like if their friends say something and call them out. And like, obviously that's such an uncomfortable thing for people to do.
Yeah.
But I'm like, why do you need to talk about it? Like, why is there even that discussion happening? Because it doesn't even affect you. Like,
No.
I don't know. I like
That's a
told
good
my mom
point.
about that conversation, and
Yeah.
she was like, oh shit, like maybe I should talk to this lady, because like,
Yeah.
fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait, that's such a good point. I love the point that you brought up, the last one, where you have to hold people accountable. Like situations like this, conversations like this, if we want to make a change, we have to make things accountable, right? So like with your parents, like saying that, that's such a good example. Like I think that if I hear my parents do that too, like I think I should say like, hey, like maybe don't use those phrases. That are they bothering you? Is it impacting you? No. Why are you commenting on that? Even with friends or family or people, like I think it's important to, even if it might be uncomfortable, like do it for the baby Priyanka or the baby Renee, you know, or like do it for the next generation, because like even if you tell 5 people and only 2 people really take what you hold accountable, like that's going to make someone's life a difference. So I think
At
that's
least one life, 1 or 2 lives that you make.
exactly. Yeah, and like I think I've been more cautious about too, like I had a good friend, like in beginning of college, like had lost a lot of weight, and I remember Priyanka, I had said too, like, oh, you look so good. Like I know I didn't mean anything bad at the time, but looking back at that, that's not good. That's not a healthy thing to say. So now I feel like I'm trying to be more cautious about commenting on people's, like I try not to make that something that I notice about someone's size, because honestly that has nothing to do with how I want to perceive someone's beauty or how I want to perceive someone's change. So I think like I try to look at someone's, maybe they got a haircut or they did their makeup differently. So I try to like, I'm not an expert at this at all, but I think I still have a long ways to go, but I'm trying to get my mindset that's so fermented from all these different societies and parents to try to explore different avenues. Like you're so happy, or like you seem more happy or
I was
something like,
gonna
you
say
know?
the happy one works like it works so
Yeah.
much better because I have a friend at the gym. She's like, I've gained so much weight. And I was like, girl, you look so happy. Does that even matter to you
Yeah,
right now?
that's so
Like,
good. I
noticed.
love that. That's
And
such a good
was
one.
like, she was like, really? And I was like, girl, you're smiling. And we had a great time at like our dance class. And I was like, you didn't have any problem with moving the way you were moving.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what you really need to be proud of. Like, that's not the first thing we're seeing. That's just in your head. She was like,
Yeah.
"Why are you saying that?" And I was like, I think some people just need to know that their energy and happiness is what counts.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. I love that idea of complimenting someone's energy. I also like, I was watching a TV show with my friend, and one of them had mentioned that one of the characters had lost like a lot of weight. And I remember thinking in my head, like, okay, this is a time for me to say something, because I definitely thought that too, but I didn't know what to do with the situation. So I tried to just be like, I was like, oh, I think maybe it's like she got a haircut or something. But I have to be more vocal about stuff like that at the time. And I always look back at that. I'm like, I should have said something and been like, hey, or like I should have been like, we don't have to think of someone's weight change or something. Like, it doesn't really matter to us. But that shows like that is an uncomfortable topic. But I think me at least addressing that I wanted to say something, even though I should have, at least next time I know that I have that little bit energy that I need to say something. So maybe like having those topics, like those conversations with family and friends, maybe that can make a difference. But I guess, what do you guys think as a brand, like we can do to kind of help make these thoughts or um feelings kind of like, and nothing will ever go away, but kind of simmer down a little bit?
I say fuel from within, like start with the human itself rather than, like you were talking about happiness and energy. Like,
Yeah.
focus on happiness and energy of the human, because no matter what we do, people are still going to put something out there that we cannot control, right? So we might as well control what our internal happiness can be. So that, I
So
mean,
what
however
would,
that would.
yeah, so what would you say if, let's say we're going to post something of a picture of someone, how would you, obviously we don't edit or anything, but how would we kind of showcase that in that post? Is it through a caption?
I would caption it unfiltered but super focused and beautiful. Like, I would have captioned something like that to where people understand that when they start seeing these things, like how we did with social media, you start seeing these weird filters. Now,
Yeah.
when they start seeing the filtering and the beautiful nature, our mindset also changes. We're like, oh yeah, she did an unfilter, I'm going to do an unfilter. Then that's how you start changing the narrative. The only thing that's wrong with that, the first, like when you start that, it's going to be a hard road, because it's that middle ground where you're like, shit, I don't know if this is going to work, but you have to stick with it. Because now when I see beautiful women, okay, I never understood people that would do like actual makeup artists that would do like professional ones on TikTok or on like YouTube. They would
Yeah.
use a filter while they're showing their makeup. And I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
so weird.
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
then they started doing the unfiltered and the natural pores and everything. And I was like, that's my girl, or that's my guy. Like,
Yeah.
when it started being so much more natural. So I think it's already starting. So you're already on the right trend and track, which is beautiful. And I love
Yeah.
that you're doing this. Like, I'm so excited. And I'm
Oh my
super
God. I love that. But Akila, I love the idea of the whole unfiltered thing. And I wonder if we did something that promoted that, like we started some kind of like selfie or challenge where
I
people
did that last year. I did a
yeah, okay.
challenge that like I had all my friends. So I did an unfiltered picture on my stories and I passed it along to 10 people and they kept on
Oh,
doing
okay.
it and doing it. Like,
Okay,
so
so there was something like that. Okay, but I wonder if there's something else that we can do to like showcase unfiltered stuff. But I like the idea. So maybe when we're posting images, like making sure there's no like filter, like only filters that will like maybe enhance
it's like
the
only
image.
color changes, but not to the point where you're super distorted or do
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I like that. Anyone else have any ideas?
Yeah.
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 Oh.
Oh, go ahead.
Are you sure you can go too?
Are you sure?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll go after.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to say, Renee, I think you're doing a great job at already kind of getting into this because again, you're using normal people like us as models. And I think for me, like when you reached out to me, that was such a big thing because I've never seen myself as that ideal. So for me, it was like, oh my God. And then like seeing people who I know personally like model for you, that's great. And you can tell like there's different body types, like everyone looks different. Nobody looks the same. So I love that. But I think and you know, you're doing a great job with having this town hall too. But I think something that you could do to kind of like go off from this is maybe if you have models who have had like stories with like body dysmorphia or eating disorders, or even just like having like an unhealthy relationship with food and how they've worked on that, I think maybe doing like a series where you showcase them and then have them kind of say their story and like do it unfiltered. You can bring in that unfiltered thing and just kind of go ahead and be like, hey, look, models go through this too, but just because you go through this doesn't mean that you can't get into this space.
Yeah, I love that. Love that idea. Definitely will do that. Sorry, I know Priyanka, you were saying that. Actually, did you have something to say about Rich's thing?
No, I'll go after Priyanka.
Okay, Priyanka.
Okay. So I think I can't remember if this is, I know this is something you said to me, but I'm not sure if you have this like posted. You probably do somewhere. But I remember like talking to you when you had come to Austin about how like the clothes are meant to fit you and you're not meant to fit the clothes. And so for context for other people, I work as a program therapist at an eating disorder clinic. So I like work with patients every day who like go through a lot of like really severe eating disorders. And it's given me like a lot of perspective on just like eating disorders as a whole. And like I can like, if you want, I can like talk more about that later. I don't know if you have like a time limit on this.
No, yeah, no, keep me on.
Okay. I can talk more about that like after
Yeah.
like I'll share at the next question or something like that. But that's something that I've told, number one, I've like bragged about Renee to like literally all of my colleagues, because this is crazy and this is so cool that like you're having something specific for South Asian people too. And like also just like that you're having an open conversation about this, because like that's what a lot of these people don't get, is that like open conversation. But I've told a lot of them about how your like idea as a fashion brand, because the first thing I say is like, oh, my friend has a fashion line. They're like, oh, that means models. Like, is that really? And then I'm like, no, her thing is like the clothes should fit you. Like you don't fit into clothes. And I like remember telling
all models. So yes, they do have models.
Right. right. But I was talking to a patient who was going through like a really hard time, and I was telling her, I was like, yeah, you know, like one of my friends, fashion designer, said this thing, and she immediately was like, whoa, I like never thought of that, because she was like complaining to me about how she like, didn't fit in her jeans anymore, and I was like, yeah, but like your clothes fit you, you don't fit into the clothes. And she was like, whoa, like mind blown. And I was like, I feel like that's like something that's really powerful. So like if you can like build more on that and like whatever, like I think that's something that goes a long way, and it's just like a small phrase, but like when you really think about it, I think it like means a lot.
You're so right. Like the other day I was like, you know, going through my jeans and I wasn't fitting in a couple of them. And obviously, you know, you'll have the first thought like, are you kidding me? Like I didn't fit in these. But then you realize that it's literally cloth, like literally cloth, that I already spent so much money on random clothes. What is me going to spend another like $20 on jeans that are actually going to fit me? And then I like can donate them, or, you know what I mean? So like, that's so true. Why have a cloth have a power on how we feel about our bodies? Like, you know what I mean? So I appreciate you sharing that with me, Priyanka. That means a lot. Akshaya?
I'm so glad you went before me, because my entire thing was about that one quote that Renee mentioned, and she did post about it. So that's where I saw it. But I wanted to say, like, even in college, I was part of a Bollywood dance team. And one thing I noticed is the guys, we had lesser guys than girls. And two, we were supposed to do stunts like flips, etc. So a few of the girls were not going to get flipped because we didn't have enough guys. And so we internally, without even talking about it, we had this competition of only the skinniest girls, or the girls that are the lightest, will get flipped. And so there was me and my other friend, we were the biggest ones, and we knew that we wouldn't get flipped, but we still had the competition to lose weight, and also to try to fit into the clothes that we bought like 6 months in advance. before competition season even started, and then to maintain that weight. So we would all go to the gym like 2 or 3 times a day for multiple hours. Even when like the guys were practicing, the girls would go into like wall squats or whatever, like different exercise in the back just to like try to reduce our weight and size. But that is something that I want to bring back to RKJ is maybe when you book models ahead of time, you can get their measurements and say like, we can still make these small alterations, etc. So even if you do gain weight or anything, like don't even worry about it. We can always figure it out.
Yeah, yeah. It's literally stitches, you know? That's so true. It's literally stitches. What is, you know what I mean? Like, what's the point of a cloth if clothes? What's the point of clothes if you can't make a change? You know what I mean? I love that. And then I love like that, I like how you both kind of connected two different kind of situations, but like that the power that clothes have on us. And it's so crazy, right? Like we talk about it and it's crazy, but it's actually like a thing. Like I mean, I go through all the time. Like if I jump sizes, I'm like, my first thing is a negative thing, but in reality, it literally doesn't matter. Like weight gain is normal. Everything is normal, you know, and like we always think that it's abnormal for some reason. But before I would love Priyanka to kind of take some time to kind of talk about her experience working in the eating disorder clinic. But Ranjit, Gary, do you guys have any experiences you guys want to share from maybe the guy's perspective about body dysmorphia in the South Asian community as a guy?
Yes, I can share some. It happens to a lesser extent for men. Like yes, I've had some from my parents and my family, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, and I would just answer like, fine. I would say large and in charge.
Yeah.
Just to answer that, and this happens, but it's not as much for men, and like in some places, like in school, like nobody really cares that I have this and judge me by it, and that is male privilege.
Yeah, yeah.
So it really is male privilege in that, and this whole thing like about judging someone by their body, like you guys mentioned, like this is like intergenerational trauma that's passed down, and this is and like healthy discussions and healthy body image was never modeled for anyone, and it's this toxic system that's all people have seen and gets passed down. I mean, it's not an excuse for that happening.
Yeah.
But this is
reality.
All right, I just had an idea about the what you were talking about the outfits and stuff. I just thought about it. But if you did one outfit for every single, I don't know if you have done this, but showcase it, do a series like on your Instagram of one outfit on every single different height and size in consecutive order, and show how beautiful it, like how outfit shows up. And it would be the same exact thing, like no matter the height or whatever. Because I do remember me being a tall girl. I have a lot of short friends. My short friends would be like, this dress is so like long for me. And then I was like, this fits me like a t-shirt. So I would wear their dresses underneath my jeans and wear it as a t-shirt, and they would wear it as a dress. So I thought,
love that.
Yeah, if you wanted
to. I like that. So I think I love the idea. So I'm obviously limited with finances, but I think that this is something that I would maybe invest in. Then I would invest in doing something like this and maybe even making another collection. So maybe like taking one outfit that I have and getting it in different sizes and doing that. I really like that. It's a great idea.
And sorry, Ranjit, I didn't mean to cut you off. My bad.
That's okay. I was thinking that a little bit more, like just a little more, and like or like the drama like this, like also like just the mentality, like the power hierarchies in our community, like where someone drives power, like whether it's from their age or anything else.
Yeah.
It's kind of where that whole thing of never impressing anyone. It's like, okay, I'm bigger than you, so I always have to throw you down somehow. And so even their attacks, they contradict each other, like, oh, you're too big, too small, too whatever. It is rooted in these traditional power hierarchies, which is isn't just a system of oppression on its own.
Yeah.
And my last thing is, it's like just this whole the Indian matrimonial show. Like I've never seen that because there's no need for me to watch it, and I always wonder, why are people watching this? Like even people who say they're like activists, they still watch the show, and and the thing that Seema says, it's just outrageous, and it's like it's just capitalizing off this
So true.
horrible system and just promoting it. And she's only going to promote it more with all the attention. And I'm just wondering, like, why are we giving attention to something like this? We should like cut this off and like just
Very
condemn it,
true.
don't give it attention. This is terrible.
Very true. I didn't think about it like that, but that's something definitely that we should definitely hold ourselves accountable for. Yeah. Gary, I don't know if you have wanting to share anything.
Yeah, I do actually. So, listening to all you guys, thank you for sharing everything. Adding on to my own thing, I feel like I've always had a problem with my personal body as well. Just because in high school, I feel like sports can be a big thing of like, for example, for me, like I played football for 4 years in high school, but in like freshman year, I feel like I was like bigger than what our average like wide receiver or like a quarterback would look like, right? So they automatically place me in like the offensive line. And if you don't know football, but often the offensive line is like a group of like the biggest guys in the team, right? And I was just automatically kind of placed there without even like, I was like, oh, I don't know, like I don't really want to be here, but why? I didn't really like have a say in what I wanted to do just because of my size. And then I got to the offensive line and they're like, oh, you're too small to be here. What are you doing here? So like I just felt like just since then I feel like I'm I feel very much in the in between since high school. But now I think I have like a more of a different take on my personal body. And I feel like now I have like a healthy relationship with going to the gym and healthy relationship with me eating um and I do it just for me, like not for anyone else, for my personal health. And like I come from a background with like my both my parents have diabetes, both my parents have hypertension, right? Like so you just do whatever you can to do for yourself and not worry about like, oh, what is this person gonna think and what is this person gonna think. And I think another thing that I just was reading about this the other day was that if you guys have noticed that Abercrombie's coming back, and Abercrombie, like growing up in high school, was all about like the ideal model, and like you go in their store and you have all these like guys with six packs, and girls that look like ideal, whatever the ideal was back then. But now Abercrombie has shifted their market into like more inclusive like body types, which is great. And I think more and more brands should be doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, Gary, I like the point where you talked about like because of your size, like you were kind of placed without you wanting to. And I think even though that was football, I think that can translate to like a normal day. I feel like maybe we enter a room and people might associate us or who we are based on our appearance or our size. So I think that's something like we can hold ourselves accountable with what we think and our friends. I also think we have to get into the mindset that like your size doesn't equate beauty or anything. Literally, like being bigger doesn't equate beauty, being skinny doesn't equate beauty. And everybody's beautiful no matter the size. Everyone is beautiful. God created everyone so beautifully, and like what's inside matters the most. So I see Akila said great documentary on AF on Netflix on body types. So yeah, I'll write that down. But I want to just give maybe like 5 or 10 minutes to Priyanka. I would love to hear Priyanka so kindly, I will share it with you guys, like wrote up this whole document for us to have resources to share with everybody. Sorry, I can't find it now. It's just I pulled it up. But it's
If you want, I can also share my screen. I have it pulled up.
oh, I think can you see it now?
No.
No. Oh, okay. Let me see. Maybe now.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, yeah. So Priyanka wrote all this eating disorder resources that I'm going to be putting on our bio too. So if you want to walk through this, Priyanka, you can, or if you want to talk about what you do, please.
Yeah, okay. So, like I said, I am a program therapist at ERC here in Austin. That is the Eating Recovery Center. It's like a nationwide eating disorder recovery center, and they have like many different levels of treatment. Right now, I work in a partial hospitalization, which is like our patients are at our facility for 10 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they do all their meals here, and usually it's like when they like come down from residential care, they like come to our program. So they're here for like a long period of time. And I will preface this by saying I have been here for like 6 months. But I have like, so I don't know, like technically I'm not like a doctor, I'm not anything like that, but it's I will say I've like learned a lot from this, and like I get to work with a lot of really cool people that like do understand this more. So it's like a list that I've curated from a couple of my coworkers too. So take it with a grain of salt, but I think that these are things that have also helped like my patients a lot, and like even like me, like I've like definitely used a lot of this stuff to like help myself. So the first thing that I want to say actually is something I wanted to say a while ago, because I think Renee, you talked about like in college, like the idea of like skipping meals and whatever. I feel like that it's so like romanticized. And like I feel like even especially with like a lot of these brown orgs, like a lot of the dance teams, right? It's like you show up to practice and you're like, damn, I haven't eaten anything all day, and everyone's like, oh my god, yeah, I haven't eaten anything in like 2 days. Like it's like that weird like unspoken competition. Um, and like what was I gonna say? I think it's also like a huge thing with sports, like Gary was talking about, like just like the bulking and the cutting and like all those things. And I think that those are like the bulking and cutting, I feel like are phrases that we start to use in our society, like that is us trying to like make restricting and like eating a lot more like seem like normal,
Yeah.
but it's not. And it's like something that we're like, oh yeah, if I say that I'm starving myself, that's wrong, but like if I say I'm cutting, like that's a lot better, right?
Yeah.
And like
Yeah.
it's all the same, it's the same stuff. And like I think it's just like important to recognize that and like call it out, call it in
Yeah.
whatever it is, like when you
Such a
hear
good
that.
point. Such a good
Yeah,
point.
like I just think like those things are good to call out, because like that's like where a lot of this stuff stems from, right? Is like also like how your parents see themselves, and like how people like when you were younger, like adults in your life, how they viewed their body. That's like a huge place that a lot of eating disorders stem from.
Yeah. Yeah.
um yeah, I think the other big thing is like obviously like with it being like a fashion line and a fashion like platform, a lot of what we're talking about is more like related to like restricting your eating and like anorexia kind of, right? Like along those lines. And um I think that it's like that also, like before I started working here, like in my head I was like, okay, like what do I know about eating disorders? I know like there's anorexia, there's bulimia, and that's really all that I had ever heard of. And like even like bulimia, I never really got a like understanding as to what it was. I was like, oh, I think people throw up sometimes, like I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Right. And like I feel like there's not a whole lot of education or whatever out there. Like we just don't talk about it enough, like for people to know.
Yeah.
But there's like a whole host of like eating disorders that can like all like horribly affect individuals. And I think like that's something that is like really cool to me, but I think it's like
Oh,
cool to share too and like be aware of.
yeah.
Um and like the couple that I work with is like anorexia. There's like a couple different types. So there's like anorexia where you're restricting, and anorexia where you're like purging. Like you're binging and you're purging, which is when you're like kind of like starving your body of a lot of food. So then like by the time you hit the night, if you haven't eaten all day, you're starving. Obviously, like you're so hungry, so your body is craving those things that are going to give it that like instant gratification, which are the things that are like probably not that great for your body, which is making you then like feel bad about it. And like those two are usually like deep rooted in body image issues. There's also bulimia, which is like just like constantly having to like excrete everything that you've eaten. And like um I if any of you have ever heard of or read the Jeanette McCurdy book, I think that's like a really really good book to read. Like obviously trigger warning, it's there's a lot of stuff in it. um but she like talks about her journey with her eating disorder. It's called I'm Glad My Mom Died. And it's one of the most interesting books I've ever read in my entire life, but definitely like super interesting and a great way to get yourself like inside the head of like what someone with like active bulimia like feels like, and like honestly just like how horrific it is. And like the couple others that I work with, RFID is one of them, and that's avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. And that one is more like having a fear surrounding a texture or like a type of food or something like that, where it really like impacts your daily life. And I think like things like that aren't like really what's talked about that much. And like that also comes from people who have like severe fears of like, I have a patient who's like very scared of throwing up, and like it like affects her eating, and she like doesn't eat because she's scared she's going to throw everything up, and like comes from medical issues. So like there's a lot of different places that this stuff comes from, but I think like it's like important to acknowledge that there's more than just like anorexia basically.
Yeah. Like I love that.
Yeah.
Rebecca, what are some common verbiage you think that you feel like maybe a lot of us might use accidentally that we could be more cautious about in our everyday sayings?
Yeah, I feel like the biggest ones is like being aware of like how you perceive yourself. Like Renee, you were saying like earlier in high school, whatever, you were like other girls were saying, oh, I like feel so fat, or like, oh, blah 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 blah. Like those are things that like 100% you should avoid, because like I don't know, like we all just met each other, but like it seems like everyone here has had like some sort of thing with that, like that stuff like affecting them. And I think that that's something that like can affect a lot of people. So like being careful of like how you comment on your own body, obviously how you comment on other people's body. And like I really like that Akila was like talking about how like you should just talk about their personality and like things that aren't like physical, like your body traits, like, and being like, oh, your hair looks good, or like, you know, something where it's just not like really like, oh, you lost a lot of weight, you know, or like, oh, your like butt looks really good to like, just like things like that, or like I don't know, just like touchy feely things where it's like you don't need to like say that. Like I really liked the like you look really happy.
Yeah.
Like I think the other thing is like definitely like the like romanticizing not eating. Like I think that's like a huge thing. Or like if you guys have seen those TikToks where people will be like, where they'll be like, oh, what I ate in a day, and it's like 1 carrot and like 2 pieces of celery, and then you're like, oh shit, she looks really pretty, and like she showed me how much she ate in a day, and that's what it was. So like now I need to like just like having different things like that, or like people like I don't know, controlling your following, like your feed too.
Yeah, like this, like that's so true, Priyanka. Like you have power of who you follow on social media. You know, like you can decide to not show if you feel like someone's content might be triggering, maybe, and they might not do anything wrong, but maybe hiding it from your profile that might be helping you in your growth. So that's something I need to practice too, I think, especially with TikTok and stuff sometimes. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And I will send this to you guys too. And I'll create a Slack if you guys don't mind. I'll add you guys to a Slack actually with all of your guys' emails. And I'm going to make like a Slack that has the town hall stuff, so I can send everything here with all the ideas that we thought of, that you guys shared and thought of today, and keep track of that with you guys together. So like making sure you guys can also hold me accountable and say like, hey, Renee, you told me that, or we talked about not doing filtered stuff, but you know, this post clearly had a filter on. So just hold me accountable, because I'm still learning and wanting to grow too. So, and if you guys ever have more ideas, more resources, like if you want to link us that book, Priyanka, in the chat later, I would love to read that book. So we could have that group to kind of like share more topics and stuff. But with that being said, does anyone have any questions or anything?
I just want to say you're doing an amazing job.
Oh, no, thank you so much
for having all of us. I truly do appreciate it. It's really nice to see someone like taking on I feel like I had a good saying in my head and I completely lost it. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. But you know, this is something I think is a team effort, you know, like this is not something that I can do. And like, it's every single one of you guys that came here, you know, spoke and shared your opinion and shared ideas. And that's actually what matters the most, in my opinion. So thank you guys. And I think that all of these ideas, I think, are only going to help. If it helps anyone, it'll help 1 or 2 people, but hopefully that helps them in the best way possible. So thank you guys so much again. Okay. And again, I'm recording this. And if you have any problem with me posting this somewhere on our social media or anything, please message me and I will crop your part out or cover you guys up. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you,
Bye.
May.
Yeah.